Welcome back, Stamina Sorc PvP fans. It's Deltia from Deltia's Gaming with a new build called the Marauder. This is going to be heavy armor and medium Stamina Sorc, so we're going to still have a lot of mobility, a lot of burst, but we're going to be real tanky with this setup. So this is the build that I showed on stream. Y'all been asking me, perfected it, want to go over everything, and then we're going to do a part 2, which will be YOLO, so you only live once, so you got proof in the pudding. Ready for Stam Sorc to make a comeback? It's good. All right, Stam Sorc fans, we are back, and I hope you're excited about this build. Fantastic. Took a long time, and I played a lot of it to get it right. The first thing I want to cover is the skills. I'm going to have them unmorph and explain why I take specific morphs like previous videos. So first things first, Sword and Shield. The reason I use it is basically I don't like using Wrecking Blow. Or Dizzying Swing, which is the spammable ability here, Uppercut. Dizzying Swing is the Sun, Wrecking Blow is the Empower. The reason I don't like it is it's a channel, it's a cast, and Sword and Shield is so much more tanky. Now you don't have as much burst using Sword and Shield over a two-hander, but the strengths of Sword and Shield is just incredibly tankiness, and you sacrifice a little offense, but actually not that much. So let's go through what I take Sword and Shield wise. Shield Charge, this is your gap closer, right? So when you're playing solo, I really like the gap closer, 22 meter range. When people try to get away from you, Sorc streaking away, boom, you can just gap close to them, knock them down. It's also going to be able to proc some of our damage effects that we're going to go over later, so it's actually a really strong damage ability too. So there's two morphs options, Shield Assault, which gives you a damage shield, and then also Invasion. So the stun lasts longer, and the reason I take Invasion is because if someone runs out of stamina and I Invasion to them and stun them, it's going to just make them more vulnerable for a while. So longer stun equals the morph that we want. Second skill up is Puncture. This is your spammable single target damage ability. Now, two really strong morphs to choose from. Pierced Armor basically does the Major Breach on top of the Major Fracture. So the reason this would be useful is if you're playing with a team with a magic user that wants to do more damage. So coordinated teams probably going to want to have this as their tool because it will increase your damage if you're having another magic user there. While Ransack basically gives you minor resolve on top of Major Fracture. So since I'm going to play this solo primarily and you can't adapt it for group play and just swap morphs, we're going to take Ransack. Third ability up comes from Dark Magic. Dark Exchange, this is pretty an obvious choice. It's staggeringly powerful. One of the most powerful abilities that Sorc has, Dark Deal. So it's going to trade magic for health and stamina. So not only is it a powerful self-heal, you're getting a ton of stamina back, while the other one trades stamina for magic. Well, we're a stam build, we don't need more magic, so that's a pretty obvious choice. There's a trick with this and the Sword and Shield ult I'm going to teach you in just a second. Fighter's Guild ability, Trap Beast. This is really, really nice, and we're going to stick with Rearming Trap. Basically, you put this down, takes a second and a half to rearm, and then it immobilizes targets inside of it. Got a staggeringly powerful tip to use this properly with this build that I've kind of learned watching Fangrush play a little bit. So Rearming Trap is a fantastic immobilize. Now the Sorc also has another really good immobilize as well, right here in case. So if you're going to play with a group and you're going to want more AoE stunning or control, you want to put that in this slot. But I don't have a whole lot of magic, so I like Rearming Trap, does great damage, and it gives me a nice boost in critical hit damage. Last active ability up is Power Bash, last ability in Sword and Shield, and Reverberating Bash. It's because of Major Defile. So the reduced healing receive, you kind of have to look at this differently. Like, if you have a two-hander and you don't have this buff, essentially the person that you're fighting against can heal themselves more reliably. While we take a Sword and Shield, and it's a great stun, and then also that Major Defile means when I'm in combat with a well-skilled player, they're not going to be able to heal themselves well, or they're going to have to use magic to cleanse themselves. So it doesn't have as much burst as two-hander, but this stun, this Major Defile, is incredibly important for taking down really good players. And then Shield Wall. Can't say enough about this ability. I think it's one of the most powerful, probably the second most powerful ultimate in the game for defensives. Both morphs are very good, and you can go with either choice. So the one choice, Shield Discipline. Now, when this is active, basically your sword and shield abilities are free. So you can sit there and spam all your sword and shield abilities, Reaver, Puncture, Invasion, get healed with our Knight's Errant gear set, and lose no stamina. All in the meanwhile, basically blocking with no cost to your stamina. So it's really offensive minded. The downside is I'm playing a Stam Sorc and I have no way to reflect projectiles since I'm not using defensive posture. So when I'm playing in Cyrodiil, I'm going to get, tons of snipers that want to kill me. So this is why I take Spell Wall. Basically, I pop this. Once the skill is maxed out, I can charge in and reliably go ham on my melee damage for 6 seconds or so and not have to worry about getting sniped, not have to worry about getting all those range attacks. And it doesn't take my stamina away, and I get the block mitigation while doing it. And look at the cost. It's nothing. So it's really fantastic for a defensive-minded ultimate. Now I'm going to show you how to use this front bar first in combat and what I would do. So the back bar is mainly for buffs, and we're going to go over those in a second. But I talked about some tricks earlier in dealing with other players. So the main thing that you're going to want to do is understand how your damage sources come from. So when you actually do a ransack here, I'm not doing that much, 5.4k, right, non-crit, so 10k, and this is obviously a PvE dummy. The idea behind this build is burst, doing as much damage in a short amount of time as we can. So we can do that by proccing our Salines. That hit 12.1k unbuffed. You can do also a light attack, and a bash, and proc your poisons, along with Salines, and a ransack. So essentially you can hit someone with about 4 different things in about a 1 second. So light attack, bash. You see how that cancels? See how those both cancel? That procs my poisons. That also, both of those attacks have a chance of proccing our saline set that we're going to go over in a little bit. And then you can put that with your ransack. So light attack, bash, cancel, ransack. That's how you burst someone down, even with the sword and shield. So after you invasion someone, what you need to do is get their back. Always in PvP I talk about that. So when you have someone's back, let's say they're playing a Magic Sorc, they can't C-frags you, right? So constantly practice when you're gap closing to someone, strafing. Strafing just simply means side to side. And remember that other players, you can literally walk through them and turn around. People ask why I jump all the time. In the previous games, when you jumped, you could turn your character faster. So I just can't turn it on and off. That's why I jump all the time. So once you invasion into gap close, we're going to basically strafe to get their back. And then if they strafe or turn to us, we're going to constantly keep strafing. In PvP, you should not be stationary, period. Rarely should you be stationary. PvE, yeah, you can be stationary and then move out of red and stuff like that. But PvP, ask yourself, am I getting some of my opponent's back? Am I positioning myself through line of sight? So forth, so on. So once we gap close, we have the target stunned. So we're going to light attack, bash, ransack. Now, depending on what happens, so once you CC someone or crowd control them, you see that little circle around their feet. That means they're immune. You can also be immune by using a movability pot like I am. So during this phase, you're just pressuring them with a light attack, ransack, weave. Light attack. Now once you get more proficient, you can throw a bash in there as well. See? And then you're hitting them with 3 attacks at once. Once they become CCable or be able to stun them again, that's when you're going to use Reverberating Bash. Boom. And reverb hits them with Salines. Roar. You have to do the roar sound. If you don't, you're not playing this build right. Y'all seen that on stream. We're setting up reverb for a very specific thing, which is to lock them down with our immobilize. So remember that I said that the mobilize basically takes, 1.5 seconds to rearm? And when you stun someone with the reverb, part of the reason people hate this skill being used against them is it's hard to basically recognize it and break free reliably or quickly. Because the animation when you get stunned with this, see how you stagger back like that? It basically takes you a second or a half a second, no matter how good of a player you are, no matter how you recognize this skill, to break free. we're going to use that to our advantage. So when I'm playing against someone, we're doing our combo, invasion, light attack, bash, ransack. You can see I'm already doing a lot of damage. Now, if they don't break free right away, I'm going to put a rearming trap down. If they break free right away, then I'm going to wait for it. I'm going to set them up with a reverb. Then I'm going to trap beast them. So hopefully that trap beast applies right after they break free or before, depending on the experience of the player. That's going to light up like a Christmas tree. They're going to take damage, and you're going to hit really hard with your critical attacks. You're going to use this to your advantage, similar to like what a Magic DK would, by wheeling around them, getting control of them. So after the trap beast, they have a couple options. They can cleanse it, they can dodge roll, they can use elusive mist. Either of those options, they're taking resources away from themselves. So you're putting pressure on them constantly, and let's say they dodge roll out of it and they're 6 meters away. Well, what are you going to do to them? Invasion. Close the gap. Get on them. Be that annoying melee player that doesn't let them get to range. And then you're going to constantly time your rearming trap with them being stunned. So if you invasion to them, they don't break free right away, put that trap down. Control, control, control. Because if you have them immobilized, you can get their back. You're doing damage. You're not taking any. Oh, yeah. And it hits hard, and you hit harder. So this takes a lot of practice. The hardest thing to do is do all this stuff when you're getting peppered and beat on. That's where the sword and board alt comes into play, because you can hit it. Then I go, okay, well, I got about 6 or so seconds where I can just go ham for a while. And sword and board goes down with the orange thing. Now I have to peel back, see if I killed a player. So you have about a 6 or 7 second window where you're going in for the kill. If it doesn't happen in that time, don't get greedy, back away, reset, wait for an ultimate, your resources, and start again. Sword and shield alt, dark deal. Awesome combo. Dark deal is a channel, meaning it's a castable ability. It takes 1 second for the animation to go as you put your hand in the air. The counter to this doing dark deal is a bash. So someone bashing you. So when you see a Stamp Sorc doing that, or a Magic Sorc, the best thing you could do is gap close, get close to them, bash them, stop them. So we're going to have a way to counter that as well, which is our sword and board ultimate. So when you put this on, you can still be interrupted by getting stunned with a disorient, but there's only a few of those in the game. It makes it a lot harder to be interrupted at range, because remember, other classes can use a range interrupt, Force Shock, morphing the other morph, and then the bow, Poison Arrow, morphed into Venom Arrow, acts as an interrupt too. So the whole goal is, we put this sword and board alt up, if we're out of juice, boom. We're getting about 5,000 stamina back each time and 9.4k self-heal. So you can see the sword and board ultimate, sword and shield, is so essential to this build and survivable. And the damage comes through timing your attacks within a short window, not so much relying on a dizzying swing. So what I will say to you is this. It takes a lot of skill, a lot of practice to get this down. I am not perfect at it. But the thing that you get out of sword and shield is more defensives than two-hander, and that's why I chose it. Okay, Deltia, well, why are you using a two-hander too? Okay, you ready for some more tricks? Let's go over this skill and build, and I know I'm talking a lot in a lot of detail, but you guys, I spent a lot of time playing this, and I want you to understand it. First quintessential skill to understand in PvP, and PvE really, is immobilizes don't have a cooldown, which is one of the most problematic things in the game right now. So there's a couple different ways to counter this. In the medium armor skill here, right here, evasion, you can take shuffle. Now, you're basically, it grants immunity to snares, removes the snares, and it's based on the amount of medium armor that you wear. So right now, 0.5 second duration, if I'm using 2 pieces of medium armor, that's a really high stam cost. I don't really want to dodge abilities, as weird as that sounds, because my resource sustain comes through heavy armor and constitution. So actually getting hit can have some benefit to us. So like Fosso told me and taught me, this is a really staggeringly powerful morph. Forward momentum, reduces the cost, and provides a brief immunity to snares and mobilizes. The downside is you don't get the monster heal, but you have to have a way to get rid of immobilizes and snares. So this is the most stamina effective cost way to do it. So we're going to have plenty of healing and other sources. Also grants us major brutality. But the real reason we're using this isn't the heal, isn't the major brutality. That's all great that it does that. It's the immobilizations and staying mobile. And then we got the Sorky Porky. What would a Sorky Porky be without Bolt Escape? 2 really strong morphs. Ball of Light, which we don't really use too much, but if you're trying to like streak away in Cyrodiil, it can be very handy. And then also this, it stuns enemies, and that's what it's all about. So I use this as an offensive tool when I'm going through multiple mobs. So Invasion is great for single target pressure. Now if you're playing in a group or you're in a keep or you're trying to get away, Streak is better, because you can streak through targets and not only stun one player, but a bunch. 4-meter radius, right? So when 3 or 4 people are chasing you, you're going to see this in the YOLO video. I streak through them. And if it wasn't for this ability, I wouldn't have survived. So it's great mobility. Now, if someone tries to get away from you, you have a ridiculous amount of tools to make it happen. Streak, bar swap, invasion, and you can close the distance in a hurry. Okay, and then Sorky Porky lovers out there know Hurricane's been nerfed, but it's still ridiculous strong. And major, resolve, ward, minor expedition. Wow. And it does damage, and it gets bigger. The number 1 buff the number 2 buff we want to maintain is Hurricane. Now, the best thing about Hurricane is the chance to proc implosion. So we don't have a finisher, so an execute. When their health gets low, you know, we have an active skill like two-hander, where we can spam it to kill them. But we have something just as effective, which is implosion. So since it's shock damage, same with streak, you can proc this. Basically just instantly killing someone. And you're going to see this in the YOLO video. So it's important to have this buff up at all times, especially going on the offensive side of things. Critical Surge is the next ability that we're going to want to tank. Since this takes major source, we don't need that. The increased healing is what we really want. So we have 2 sources of major brutality, and that can seem redundant at first. But the real reason I'm taking this is because I'm sacrificing the burst heal with Rally, that morph. So it makes sense to me to stack heals on top of each other. So we're going to get to that in a second, but this is another way we can self-heal reliably based on us doing damage. So you have to play a Stam Sorc way different than other classes. Be aggressive. When you're doing damage, you're getting healed. When you're sitting there doing your own thing, you're not going to get healed a lot because we don't have major mending. So we have to play aggressive. Partly because of this is Critical Surge. Last morph up, Alliance War, Vigor. So the only time I would take Echoing Vigor is if you're playing with a coordinated group and someone else is a stand build using Resolving Vigor. So if you wanted to play this more tanky, you can swap in a couple of skills. Guard, take away your Gap Closer and Streak, put Guard on there, swap to Echoing Vigor, take the AoE Mobilize, boom, you're just as good as any of the other tank builds and you're in a Stam Sorc. So since I'm going to play solo primarily, to start, I'm going to take Resolving Vigor because it heals more effectively. Now, while we're on to healing, I want you to understand where your heals come from. Because that's going to determine how you play this build very, very well. So we have no source of major mending, right? But we have a lot of other things going for us as a Stam Sorc. We go to our skills, so I have a heal over time with forward momentum. I have damage that critically heals me for a lot with Crit Surge. I have Resolving Vigor, which is an on-demand self-heal. Also, I go here, I have a channeled self-heal. And then our gear set that we're going to get to in a little bit, Knights Errant, heals us as well. On top of all that, we have poisons, which people hate, but we're going to go over why I use them. And then lastly, we have lingering health. We can take a tripod or just a normal potion as well. So you have, 5, 6 sources of healing. So major mending, not having that, is not a problem on this build because you just have so many ways to get heals. Last ability up is Dawnbreaker, and the no-brainer choice here is Dawnbreaker of Smiting, since we don't really need more weapon damage on our back bar, but we are going to have some offensive fire power on our back bar. So unbuffed here, you can see our weapon damage is at 2600, and then we bar swap it and it's 2300. So there's actually an incentive to use Dawnbreaker on our back bar as a bursting tool. So when I say bursting tool, the reason I use an axe on this build is, let's go here. Axes grants your melee attacks a percentage-based chance to do physical damage, a bleed. This thing is ridiculously powerful. So when I say burst, we're going to do the same thing that we're trying to do on our front bar on our back bar. So the way you totally offensively burst someone down, this is going to be a little bit complex, so stick with me. We've already talked about the combo in the front. The back bar, since we know fully charged heavy attacks restore stamina, gives us a bleed, we're going to center our damage around that. So when you do a fully charged heavy attack, there comes a point at about the top of it where you can get the resource sustain. So right there, boom, you see that? And I glow green. That means it's a fully charged heavy attack and it registers. So that's where we want to basically time when we use a Dawnbreaker of Smiting. Boom. You see how those three things proc? Heavy attack, salines, and a drain health poison. Now to add on top of that, we're going to do our fully charged heavy attack and then a Dawnbreaker. So you do and bop. Now, look at that burst. Along with the weapon bleed, you're most likely going to kill someone instantly if they're unprepared. Now, to add on top of all of that, you would do a fully charged heavy attack, a Dawnbreaker, and then immediately bar swap. So watch how this looks. See? And it registers it. So you can actually go get the axe bleed going and then do a ransack. Very complex, hard to pull off, but it's worth it. In my YOLO series, You Only Live Once, you're going to see something that I want you to understand here, and that is the fully charged heavy attack. Not only is it a buff bar, but this thing is deadly and violent. So when you're peeling back, let's say there's 580 bow users all shooting me, and I need to get away. So we're going to use line of sight, meaning we're going to hide behind a rock, a tree, a pillar, or whatever, so they can't target me, right? Don't just stand there. Priority number one is to get your buffs up. So I'm going to get my Major Brutality. I'm going to get my Hurricane. I'm going to get my Crit Surge up, right? So I'm ready to go again on damage. But then, sit there and do a fully charged heavy attack. Because a lot of times what the funny things you'll see that happen is people will come around the corner to try to kill me in melee range. And I already have a fully charged heavy attack ready for them. So I just turn to them and then, boom, 6-7K. And it costs me nothing. And it gives me back stamina on top of it as well. So you'll see me a lot of times just sit there and hold this button down. You're like, what is Deltia doing? He's jumping. He's holding this heavy attack down. It's specifically to train my brain to do that when nothing else is going on. We don't have a bow, right? So we can't charge it and turn around and look. But what we're doing is waiting for them to come around the corner and just get nuked. And you're going to see someone get shredded doing that. Now we're going to talk about gear. So the new food, the build center around the new field essentially. The Dubious Camoran Throne. This food came out in the Jesters, Stamina Recovery, Max Stam, Max Health. So it's a drink. Why is that important? Because of Bone Pirate Tatters. This has been a really good set, but now that there's a drink that adds health, you're not completely missing out on your health. So I was using Bone Pirate Tatters a while back on my Imperial because I just had such a larger health pool and I loved it. But now you can use it on anything, and it's probably, up there with Viper, the best set for Stam PvP, hands down. And you can get this from Blackheart Haven. The other set you can get from Blackheart Haven is Knights Errant. Adds weapon damage to your one-hand shield abilities, and then when you use a one-hand shield ability, you heal yourself. The 2 through 4 pieces are really powerful as well, but the fact that everything you do on your front bar pretty much heals you, besides rearming trap, along with all your other healing going on, it makes you so tanky. So you don't have to take as much time to sit there and go back to your back bar and cast heals. Some other options instead of this set would be 7th Legion. It's really good, gives you a lot more weapon damage than this, but the problem is it's based on you getting hit. Another set I tried is Ravager. Gives you a lot more weapon damage as well, but it's unreliable in terms of when you need it. Sometimes it procs and you're just doing tons of crazy damage. Sometimes it doesn't. So those are about 3 options. I figured that Knight Errant is best for me just because I'm really, really tanky. 2-piece set, Salines. Why don't I use Tremor Skill? This hits harder, way harder. And it's based off of not taunt. So what happens is it procs more reliably when I'm using my two-hander, when I'm doing a light attack, when I'm doing a bash, when I'm doing an invasion. You see what I'm saying with this? So it just happens more, hits harder, the one piece is max stamina. It's just the best set for pure damage out there. Now, this comes from obviously Saleen's Web, the helm does, the shoulder you can get through the Undaunted Pledges. If you wanted to be ultra tanky, I would go with Troll King. Still one of the best sets out there for pure tanks. So if you want to play in a group build, you go with Troll King and then do Echoing Vigor, and you provide a lot of utility similar to the T3 or Bubble Trouble. For enchants, you don't need resources, so go with weapon damage. And when I say you don't need resources, I'm at 1600 recovery just sitting there stagnant. And that's with 5 pieces of heavy armor on. Heavy, medium. So on no CP, this drops down to 1300, but I have Constitution as well. So it's just freakishly powerful. Now, Consumables, the most overpowered poison in the game, drain health poisons that reduce all resources. People hate that I use this, but guess what? When 10 people are chasing me down in an open field, all with their bows using this, I'm going to use whatever advantage I can possibly get to kill them. This is the best poison. So I would recommend using it if you're tired of getting zerged down and you want extra damage and you want extra resources. Other drain health poison I use in my back bar is a little bit more damage, and since I have a 2H, I really want just to go for the kills. With Maelstrom weapons and poisons, you still get the added weapon damage, you just don't get the thing the enchant gives you. So like, for instance, Maelstrom 2Hs would be the leap doing a damage over time effect. I don't have crit rush on my bar, so it provides no benefit for me. So that's why I'm going to put this there. So essentially, just doing a fully charged heavy attack can register 2 damage over time effects. Other consumables that I use, you notice that I don't have a source of major expedition since I'm not using a bow. So I rely on the essence of immovability potions. You'll also see me sometimes, from time to time, use tripods. So basically health, magic, and stamina when I really need a burst heal. And so that comes in handy, so I keep 3 of them on me. The last one is Essence of Lingering Health, Major Vitality for a time. Like I said, we don't have Major Mending, but we can semi-proc Major Vitality with this. These are great in a duel if you really want to be tanky, or if you're going to go into a situation where you're good on resources, but you just need a lot of health. Last thing I want to touch on is champion points. Now, this build is designed for no champion points, but it works just fine with CP. So what I would do in champion points situations is focus on the tumbling. Reduce dodge roll and break free. We're not really doing a lot of dodge rolls. You shouldn't be doing dodge rolls in heavy armor, but you're going to have to do it a couple times, and you're going to have to break free a lot with people reliably stunning you. So it's useful for us to go there. A lot into recovery, since we are using stam recovery food, and we're also using a recovery set. And then I put 10 points into sprinting, since I'm an orc and I sprint quite a lot with those movability potions, giving me major and minor expedition. I am freaky fast, so getting away, I got streak, I got sprint. It's an amazing combo. And then reduce stamina cost. Now, you'll notice I don't have anything into magic, and my magic comes back pretty fast anyway, so I don't really worry about that. Moving over to here, quick recovery, I just do about 10 points into there, and then I want 20 points in here, crit resistance. So with 5 impenetrable, 20 points into here, we should have enough crit resistance to make it so we're not getting nuked down with a big old heavy attack. And then an 80-80 split seems to be the best, and then 10 in the thick skin. So something that you need to know, Thaumaturge isn't going to benefit us if we're not playing like a dual wield build where we're using rapid strikes, or a two-hander with wrecking blow or dizzying swing. So I do put some points in there, but not so much. I really focus on physical penetration, critical strikes, and then a whole lot into mighty. Mundo Stone, there's a lot of really good choices. So the Shadow Mundo Stone is going to give you burst heals, and it's going to give you burst damage. The problem with it is Saleen's cannot crit, and that's the cornerstone of my build. So the Thief is going to give you more reliable healing with crit surge, but Saleen's cannot crit. So you'll see that I'm just going to go with the Warrior, and it's just simple. It's not the best Mundo Stone ever made, but it's worked for me because it applies to everything. It applies to my heals, applies to Saleen's, applies to Knight Errant, applies to major brutality. So that's why I went with this. You're going to go all attributes into stamina, pretty simple, and you can get about 3k weapon damage on your sword and shield bar once you're fully buffed and Wrath is all the way procced. And on an orc, I'm sitting at almost 39k stamina, so your damage comes from your max stamina pool, really. And then if we go here, race. Orc, I think, is the best PvP stamina race. Max health, max stamina, that's great. Increased healing received and health recovery. Now pair this guy with Troll King, you're awfully tanky, but I really like the salines for damage. And then we talked about sprinting. Great sprint speed, and then increased damage done with melee attacks by 4%. It's just one of the best races you can be for Stam PvP. Now, you can play this with the Breton and do just fine. It comes down to the player and the skill. This orc might give you a 5% advantage over a Breton. I don't know. So don't freak out about the race. Worry about getting better and proccing your bash, light attack, ransack, bar swap, vault. Worry about that stuff than your race. Notice I'm not a vampire or a werewolf. The reason I'm not a vampire is I don't use the ultimate, I don't use elusive mist to escape, and I don't want extra fire damage. The reason I'm not a werewolf is I don't like losing control of my character necessarily, and werewolf has some really good powers and it can do really well, but I like to be in my character the whole time, and I'm using the Sword and Board and Dawnbreaker ultimates, so I don't see an advantage to werewolf. Leveling this build, if you want to level this build or any Stam build really, the best thing to do is dual wield right away. Dual wield skill, I still don't see people using this, and I don't understand why. Flurry, your main spammable attack, right? You can use this on any Stam build, even a Templar if you want. Bloodthirst. It heals you based off of the damage that you do. So you can kind of use this like a stamina puncturing sweeps the entire game. Single target damage, but it heals you for the damage done. So you can almost out heal everything while leveling with just this one ability as a Stam build. Pick it up, take it. I don't care if you're playing this build, tank, whatever. If you're leveling as a Stam build, dual wield is your friend. Now, if you know at endgame, okay, well, I'm going to be using a 2H and Sword and Shield, all you need to do, pick up dual wield, put a Sword and Shield ability on your bar, put a 2H ability on your bar. Yes, those will level while they're on your dual wield skill line. You won't be able to use them, they'll be grayed out, but when you reach endgame level 50, you're going to have Sword and Shield, and you're going to have 2H leveled up versus getting to endgame, using dual wield the whole time, and then having to spend another 10 hours grinding out skill points and skills. That is the build, and I want to show you how freakishly powerful this is in YOLO. I think it's one of the best builds I've made. I'm no Fangrush, as I consider him the best Stam Sorc, but I'm telling you, this can hold its own. And it's great for people that want to play tanky, but also do damage. You make a couple of changes, and you have great tanking, great utility. You got speed, you got burst. It looks cool, which, you know, you look cool, you play cool. So, I mean, it's one of the better builds I've made. So I hope that you guys like this. Let me know. I took a lot of time, a lot of detail, because I want to make sure this build works for you and you understand how to play it. Come back for part 2 YOLO to see if the hype is really real, and if I'm just talking crap, because I'm nuking people. I will see you then.